Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the precious metal verse. Today, we're going to talk about silver and discuss the likelihood of a potential breakout over the next few months. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the precious metal Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, as you guys know, we primarily cover cryptocurrency on this channel. Beyond cryptocurrency, we do talk about the stock market somewhat frequently. And beyond that, we sometimes dabble in commodities. And we actually spoke about gold last week a couple of times in a video on logarithmic regression of gold and looking at the undervaluation and overvaluation, and then also its own bull market support band. And remember that the gold bull market support band, as we discussed last week, is actually what we, as far as we can tell, it looks closer to the 21-month EMA and the 20-month SMA. As long as we're holding support above that, then gold is looking relatively good. Even if you get a close below it, as long as you get back above it the following week, gold is still in business. And we sort of find ourselves in the phase of, okay, it just spent several months holding that level as support. This is not to be confused with the Bitcoin bull market support band, which is currently being rejected right now by the 20-week SMA and 21-week EMA, right? So crypto currently is in a bear market, but precious metals right now appear to be in a bull market. Okay, so it's important to recognize what's in a bear market, what's in a bull market, and to be able to shift and focus on various things in various phases. Now, what I wanted to talk about in this video, we're going to specifically focus on silver, but in order to do that, we have to set the stage, right? So the first part of the setting the stage involves showing that the health of the market can also, like Bitcoin, with Bitcoin, you kind of see if Bitcoin's doing well, the rest of the market's doing well. Right now, we're seeing gold do pretty well, okay? And gold's doing pretty well. It's held the line at the bull market support band. The only worry, I think, is it emulating what we did back in 2012, where it's going to come back up and put in a slightly lower high and then come back down. I actually think that while that could happen, I don't want to be deterministic about anything, except maybe Bitcoin trading up with time. But while it could happen that we come back down below here, I think it's actually a lot more likely that gold will actually have a breakout here and trend to higher prices. And if that is the case, right, if that is the case, then I think it would bode relatively well for silver. Okay, so if you look at the same type of support band for silver, it doesn't respect it in the same way that Bitcoin does. But we see that, we can actually see some similarities here between, say, like Bitcoin and Ethereum and gold and silver. For instance, Bitcoin does a really good job of holding this bull market support band to define the health of the bull market, whereas Ethereum can sometimes hold it, but other times it doesn't really matter if it doesn't hold it or not. Like over here in late 2016, even though Ethereum didn't hold its bull market support band, because Bitcoin did, right? Because Bitcoin did, we were still in business. In the same way, you could argue that, well, gold is holding it. So in the same way that silver, has struggled a little bit to hold it, it hasn't been as strong as gold recently. It still is relatively back in business, right? It's still in business considering that gold is holding up relatively well. So one of the things that we've discussed a couple times, at least on the premium list, is the idea that silver is somewhat lagging behind gold right now. But we also see that happen in the cryptoverse as well, right? A lot of altcoins can lag behind Bitcoin until Bitcoin puts in a new all-time high. So it could just be that you're seeing silver lag behind gold until gold is definitively proving that it's not going to repeat this scenario, right? As long as gold is not going to repeat this scenario where this is A and B, and we can actually see a breakout and then maybe a climb to higher prices, then I would argue that the likelihood that gold is going to break out would go up a lot. Okay, so right now, if you look at least the local high, obviously we know that going back a lot further, you can see a lot going on in this market. But at least looking at this local high right here, the amount that silver would have to go up just to get to that level, to go back to where it was back in 2011, would require a 92% move. For gold to get back to its prior all-time high, it would not require as strong of a move, right? You're just talking about it moving up about 4.5% or so. Now, if you go back and look at gold's history, it's filled with sort of all these bull markets and long bear markets. And I think the argument right now is that it's arguably in the middle of a bull market that's going to last for several years. So when I think about the precious metal asset class as a whole, I need to first understand, well, what is gold likely going to do, right? Is gold undervalued or overvalued? Is it going through some type of a phase where it should be in a macro bull market? And I honestly think that it is. I think that gold is more likely going to continue to increase over the next several years. And so while I look at silver and I say, silver is currently trading at around $25, $26 or so. So it's still relatively low compared to where its prior all-time high was. So, I mean, you imagine silver would have to go up 2x just to get to its prior all-time high. The argument of a potential breakout for silver is sort of buried in the idea that gold is going to surge past its all-time high. Now, if this happens and gold is able to surge past its all-time high, definitively prove that it's not repeating this pattern, but it's actually, say, somewhere over here, and it's in a longer-term bull market, okay, then what I think would happen is that silver might lag behind for a while, but then I think it's actually going to play some catch-up over the following, maybe let's call it 5 to 6 years or so. Probably the better part of this decade, to be completely honest, because we're already in 2022. So you're talking about the next 5 or 6 years, maybe going out until 2030. One way to visualize this, as you guys know, is to not look at necessarily the silver USD valuation like we like to do with a lot of assets, the USD valuation, but we're better than that. We understand that there's a better way to value these things. Why? Because fiat is just it depreciates, right? It trends towards zero if you look at its purchasing power over the macro scale. So the argument is, why measure the value of silver in US dollars when a lot of the people that hold silver are holding it because they prefer that over US dollars? So why don't we measure it against something else? Why not measure it against gold, right? Why not measure it against another precious metal and try to understand, well, is it undervalued or overvalued with respect to gold, which we think could be going through a macro bull market? And if you look at gold right now, again, if the argument is that it's sort of at a phase where it's holding the bull market support band down here or something like this, which means it's going to ultimately take out its prior high and continue into a longer sustained bull market, then silver seems like silver is probably lagging behind. Why don't we go look at the gold-silver ratio? What we notice is that the gold-silver ratio tends to oscillate, right? Between, say, this is the price of gold divided by the price of silver, between, say, 42 and around 88, 87, 80. Well, I guess it depends on where you're exactly measuring it. Maybe 82. Why don't we just let's call it 40 to 80, right? So around $40, a ratio of 40 to 80, and then back to 40 or so, and then back to 80, and then all the way back down to 40. This one actually had a wick that took it all the way down to 30, and then in the same way that it took a wick down below, well, it's more than a wick, I guess, but this is over a monthly time frame or years, then we had a move up to 130 almost. And now we find ourselves right here, okay? So when I look at this chart from I try to do it from an unbiased perspective. Full disclosure, I do own gold and silver. Okay, they are smaller positions than I have for a lot of my other in the rest of my portfolio, but they are positions nevertheless. So when I look at this chart, what I think is, first of all, you need to understand that this chart spans decades, right? This is going all the way back right here to 1997. So whatever, when we talk about what we think is going to happen in this video, doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow. It just means this is an overarching trend that we might see play out over the next, say, 5 to 6 years or so. And the idea is that the gold-silver valuation is actually at the top of its range if you exclude this wick. Well, again, it's more than a wick, but if you exclude these few months where it went above it, the gold-silver ratio is sort of getting close to the top of its range again. And so the argument is that silver is lagging behind so far, but I think it's lagging behind because gold is still trying to put in a new all-time high and show that the bull market is in full effect. And then if it does so, I think silver could easily catch up. And if silver catches up quickly and moves quicker than gold, then I think the path of least resistance here is for this metric to go down, which means if the if the valuation of gold over silver is going down, okay, so if this is going down, then that means that silver is outperforming gold, okay, because the larger the denominator gets, with respect to the numerator, you would expect this thing to go down. So my argument over the next, say, 5 to 6 years, again, I don't make videos on precious metals very frequently because they just don't do much, right? I mean, you make I made videos on gold back in August of 2020 and July of 2020 when gold was at like $1,700, $1,800. And I didn't really make a video on gold for the next year and a half. And some people ask me why. I'm like, well, it hasn't done anything. I mean, it's only a couple $100 higher. You're talking about a 10% move. I mean, Bitcoin did a 10% move like last Tuesday or something, right? So the point is to say, when we are in a risk-off environment like we currently are, right? A risk-off environment, and you look at everything as a whole, and you say, you know what? Right now, it sort of sucks, but crypto is in a bear market, right? Bitcoin is in a bear market, and therefore you're seeing altcoins are in a bear market. But it's not that surprising considering that the S&P is still stuck in traffic on Struggle Street and it's been relatively bearish recently. I mean, by the way, I think it's actually about to have a death cross, which, as you guys know, it is a lagging indicator, so it's nothing you need to be taking to the bank or anything. Actually, the last death cross that the S&P had actually marked the bottom back in March of 2020. But regardless, even if this gets to bounce up, it doesn't really mean anything until we're actually putting in new all-time highs. So you have the S&P in a downtrend, right? You have the dollar in a fairly strong uptrend right now. So we're in a risk-off environment. But given everything that's going on in the world, it makes sense that precious metals have been rallying. So, I look at this and say, well, what is the main risk of a position in silver right now? I think the main risk is if gold repeats what happened in 2011 and 2012 and sort of just comes back down and does something like this, that's your main risk. I mean, even if that happens, your losses are probably going to be somewhat minimized because it's not like this is crypto where you can watch everything drop 85% on a long weekend. But it's, you could certainly see some losses if gold were if it were not able to put in a new all-time high and continue its bull run. So I would argue that the main risk to holding silver right now is gold being unable to set a new high and continue the rally. However, I do think there is a higher probability that gold will continue the rally. And therefore, if it can continue the rally, then I think there's a good chance that silver will continue its own rally, potentially lag behind gold for a little while, and then ultimately play catch up. Okay, and if it plays catch up, then you could probably imagine the gold-silver ratio probably dropping over the next few years, meaning there's a high probability, if that were to play out, right, that silver would outperform gold. So what we're looking for would be for silver to see a fairly strong rally to the prior all-time high, which is, I mean, this is a 100% move almost. And if that happens, then we probably would find some resistance, maybe pull back a bit, and then continue on the journey. Now, the one thing you have to consider with these videos is that precious metals, in the same way that you can send cryptocurrency super quick and the market is very volatile, and you can see sort of whole cycles play out in the same time that it takes gold for just to go through an accumulation range, right? Like this is a few years of an accumulation range or a bear market. What's interesting with precious metals is that, again, in real life, they take a lot longer to move, but also the chart patterns just take a lot longer as well. And this long phase over here, I mean, this lasted years. So I put this video out right now, and there's still a good chance that gold could not put in a new all-time high imminently, right? I mean, what if it just gets boring? It could still get boring for another 6 months, and therefore silver could be boring for another 6 months. So when you look at these charts, we're sort of used to looking at Bitcoin and looking at like daily candles and weekly candles. But from precious metals, I mean, this chart right here, this is going back to 94. I mean, just on what I have on the screen, right? This is going back to 1994, right? 1994. So when I think about this chart for silver, I say, well, I don't really know what it's going to do in the short term. But even if it played out something like this, where it sort of slowly rallied to a new all-time high and did something like that, if it weren't, say, like an instant move, which, I mean, if it pulls a nickel, it could be a lot quicker. This could still take a while. Okay, so I think if you're looking to have things like precious metals in your portfolio, it's not a short-term play, right? This is a long-term play. This is a allocation in a portfolio that you're not looking to just flip on a daily basis. It's just to say, you know what? The market is very uncertain right now with everything going on in the world. Might make sense to have a small position in this asset class, might not, depending on what your own risk, what your own risk tolerance is. But I did want to present silver as a potential, it's a potential candidate for going on a bull market. I think a lot of it depends I mean, obviously, I think a lot of it depends on what gold's going to do. And if gold ultimately does trend higher, then I think you're likely going to see silver lag behind for a little while and then ultimately see a breakout. But just remember that these things take place over years or at least months rather than days or weeks like we would see play out in the cryptocurrency asset class. So try to have some perspective on it and recognize that a lot can happen in crypto over a weekend, but with silver, well, it doesn't trade on the weekend, right? So here I'm kidding. But with silver, you're really talking about longer plays. But if you're just looking for, not a lot of stress and just somewhere to park your money or to park part of your money for a while, this could present an alternative. I wanted to mention, I think part of the issue I think people have is plugging in with various communities. You're so used to talking about cryptocurrency. And look, I mean, I know this video is on silver, but we may primarily talk about cryptocurrency. Look, cryptocurrency is a growing asset class. It's not growing anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Right now, it's in a bear market, okay? So it's in a bear market right now, and just looking for ways to diversify, okay? We're trying to present ways that you can diversify. And one of the things, too, that we've mentioned before is that finding community really helps. We have the Telegram, the precious metal Telegram group that you can join. You can talk about precious metals there, but also there's some subreddits that are somewhat interesting to go peruse, see what people are doing. One of the ones that I sometimes hop on is Wall Street Silver. There's always some interesting stuff going on over there. So maybe check them out. I'll link this in the description below as well. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoy the slight diversification on content. There's only so many times we can say Bitcoin's in a bear market, and we have to be patient before we need to talk about some other stuff. So here we have it, silver. Let me know what you guys think about it. If you want me to cover it more, I will. If not, I'll still probably cover it even if you don't want me to, just because we need to talk about some other stuff when we are in a bear market for crypto and for the stock market. So here we are. We'll see gold's currently in 1987. Silver is at $25, almost $26. So we'll see how this continues to play out over the coming months. And maybe we'll revisit this video in a year or so and see, how did it play out, right? Were we right? Did gold put in a new all-time high? Was silver just lagging behind for a while? And did silver play catch up? Maybe we'll come back in a year and see what happened. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time. Bye.